What is the Xbox expansion pass? I don't know. Oh, hello. Greetings. I am 343 Guilty Spark, monitor of Installation 04. Greetings to all of you reclaimers here on Xbox Expansion Pass. Xbox Expansion.
Welcome welcome all to episode 116 of the Xbox Expansion Pass, recorded on Sunday, January 23rd, 2022. I am your host, Lohr, the InsipidGhost. In this episode, we welcome Captain Logun on to discuss the bombshell announcement of Microsoft acquiring Activision, and that's it. That's what we talk about. That's the show. Enjoy. Yet another week of gaming is upon us and behind us. Welcome to XEP, discussing all things in the gamerverse as they pertain to the Xbox ecosystem. And as I am wont to do each and every week, I like to start the show by offering words of kindness to those who have made my gaming week better. And this week, the words of kindness extend to my good friend, Captain Logun, host of a new Xbox show that you should all be checking out called the Xbox Wrap Up. Captain Logun, how are you, sir?
I'm doing good, Luke. It's great to be on. Thank you for inviting me for this, what could be an amazing week to be talking about games. And thank you for that call out, man. Yeah, the podcast has been a really fun thing to be jumping into.
Well, it was an appropriate time to have you on because you are 3 episodes into this new Xbox show. You host a very successful Sea of Thieves podcast called Keelhaul Podcast, which in my Sea of Thieves playing times was a regular. And I still jump in from time to time for sure. But I'm not like in my Sea of Thieves zeitgeist at the moment. But you needed to have a spotlight here because you got this new show. I really enjoy it. 3 episodes in. I was listening to it yesterday, in fact. And it needs more eyes on it. So we've got you here talking about what is easily the biggest thing to happen in gaming ever, in my opinion. Never a bigger week in gaming news, in my opinion. So we had to have you here. Tell people about the Xbox Wrap Up.
Yeah, well, thanks to you and to like Mr. Badbit and Sean Capri
okay.
and stuff.
Okay, Sean. Yeah, Sean's good.
Yeah. Joe's terrible, but yeah,
Right.
Sean and them. Like, thanks to you guys for doing what you do, because honestly, the reason I started off with a Sea of Thieves podcast. It was a passion project. It was easy to focus on one game, make sure that I know what I'm talking about, and feel comfortable doing that. And then after about 4 years, I kept feeling like there was more to talk about. I had more opinions and thoughts, like I'm sure many podcasters have. And before you know it, like I'm feeling envious of you guys and the awesome shows that you're doing. So I was like, I just need to do it. I just need to make my own podcast where I feel like I can get my feelings out there and just focus on the news and stuff. So that's kind of what the Xbox Wrap Up is. I kind of joke to friends that the Xbox podcast is the best general gaming news podcast disguised as an Xbox show. So while I don't normally focus on just Xbox, I cover PlayStation and Nintendo and general gaming stuff as well. The goal of it is to come at things from an Xbox perspective, because I love the console. I love the ecosystem. I think they're doing an amazing job, and we'll get into a little bit about how it's going to even be better in the future. But I think that looking at things from that perspective, but covering everyone, is kind of a healthy way to make sure that people stay up to date. So the Xbox Wrap Up kind of takes all of the news throughout the week, and I try and see if I can condense all of it down with enough reference to keep people in the loop about things in a 1 hour thing. So if you don't happen to listen to shows that are daily, or if you don't have an opportunity to hear the other side of the gaming industry, if you're just focused in on one console, I try to kind of sneak everything in a way that makes sense with the Xbox Wrap Up. And that's That was kind of the goal going into it. But when you're trying to come up with a general podcast name for like games and stuff, it's so hard these days to try and think of something that's witty, that's easy to understand, but not already taken. And having like Xbox in the name really helps with the SEO for podcasts and stuff. So I figured if I was going to focus on any one console, it had to be the Xbox.
So you're suggesting that you discuss all things in the Gamerverse as they pertain to the Xbox ecosystem? Is that what you're doing, my friend?
Yes. I
Oh
told
my
you I was going to.
There we are. Ladies and gents, if you like this show, you need to be having the Xbox wrap up in your playlist as well. Easily.
Aw, that's so sweet of
Easily.
you.
Oh, you know, I'm a sweet man. I'm a sweet man. You're
You
available on
are.
all podcast services. Is that right?
Yeah. If there's something that isn't getting pushed out to the feeds right now, I just need to know about it so I can work on that. But yeah, you should be able to find it on pretty much everything. I think the only place that I don't have it right now is YouTube, which I know is a huge sin. But I have not found the time to be able to grab the audio, generate an image or something for those and throw those up. But that's kind of on the to-do list for right now.
Well, I'm right there with you and the YouTube space. I throw the static image up, and that to me was a big process. And I'm so appreciative of everybody that goes and supports that. And before we get started into this big old Activision news, they can find Xbox Wrap Up on Twitter at the Xbox Wrap Up. And I want all of you guys to do that. It's a brand new account, so the follower account is currently low. Let's throw him some love and throw him some support for sure.
Oh, thank you, man.
Yeah, dude.
Appreciate that.
Well, before we do talk Activision, I've got a bit of housekeeping to do. As a reminder, there is a February game giveaway. I will give away a game of your choice, dear listeners, if you head to Spotify and rate the Xbox Expansion Pass 5 stars, and then respond to a tweet thread that I've got out there for it, or you can just email it or DM it to me, just an image that you have done so, and I will enter you into a game giveaway of your choice. It does not need to be an Xbox game. I'm just going to send you a code for the proper amount for it, or gift it to you depending on the platform. I just want you guys to be able to play some games, and thank you for enjoying the show. And I will announce the winner on February 1st. Logan, we've got some serious stuff to talk about. Activision has been purchased by Microsoft for $68.7 billion. That is 10 times the amount that was paid for Bethesda just a year or so ago, a year and a half, or maybe even 2 years, whatever. 10 times the amount they paid for Bethesda. What, Logan? Like, tell me, did anyone see this coming? Never an insider that I heard said this was coming. And yet, when you look back, it makes perfect sense. Tell me your reactions.
This was insane. I was really, I'll be honest, I was really happy to see this news. I know a lot of people get wary when it comes to acquisitions and what that does to the industry and how exclusives can be bad for the ecosystem. And the fanboy of me, the Xbox side of me, and the Blizzard fan of me was like, yes, finally, we get a little bit of peace. We can get rid of Bobby Kotick. We can turn this ship around. We can finally get the stuff we want. So I was a little happy about it. It was kind of cool, Yeah.
Well,
so yeah, 68.7 billion. That's insane, dude. How does that
insane.
What does that number even mean?
It's a lot of zeros. It's a lot of buy money for a lot of different IP, a lot of studios. To me, this is a huge get in a lot of ways, given that they did pay $7.5 billion for Bethesda, and we thought that was a huge amount. To go 10 times that, snag Activision, but snag so much potential as well. They've got a lot of baggage for it. Let's take a look at some of the number aspects outside of just the dollar amounts, which was so close to 69 million. We have to look at the studios that they picked up in this purchase. They snagged Blizzard Entertainment, Beanox, Digital Legends, High Moon Studios, Infinity Ward, King, which you'll know from the mobile space of Candy Crush, Radical Entertainment, Raven Software, Sledgehammer Games, Toys for Bob, Woot, and Treyarch. That's a lot of studios. That's a lot of talent. But everyone seems to be talking about one franchise within that, and that is Call of Duty. thinking about these studios, that brings the total amount of Xbox game studios up to 34, I think. There's been a little bit of mixed perception on this, given that certain studios are kind of just support studios and whatnot. Nonetheless, to snag the talent they did and bring the Xbox Game Studio talent to 34 is just wild to me, given the cadence that we're going to have going forward. Any particular studio that you're really excited to see something come from, or is it about IP for you?
It's oh man, I would love to see Toys for Bob. I'll be honest, I kind of want to see Vicarious Visions kind of get ripped away from Diablo a little bit. Let the Diablo team kind of build up on its own, and let Vicarious Visions do what they want to do. I would love to have Jen O'Neill have an opportunity to come back and have her piece and be able to do what she wanted to do instead of feeling pushed out from the company. But I mean, Ravensoft has been dealing with some issues right now. I would love to see what they can do on their own. Infinity Ward is they're all really good studios. The IP like Spyro and Crash Bandicoot, I would love to see more focus on those. I think they're great franchises, but there's tons of other IP that's been lying dormant under the Activision name that we just, we don't even get to even talk about. And that's, there was a tweet that went out, and I think it was a 10-minute interview with Washington Post with Phil Spencer, talked about, Hexen and some of the other games like Rock Band and stuff, the things that they have the IP now for that they could actually do something with. Like, imagine if these studios just had the opportunity to make what they want. And I think, I talked about it on my show, but I think Matt Booty is kind of the one that's in charge of the studios. And he just kind of goes from studio to studio to studio and says like, hey, what do you want to do? Do you want to make a new IP? Imagine, if Toys for Bob just wanted to make something that was brand new instead of being a support group for Call of Duty.
Right there, and that's the big thing. Call of Duty is the talking point that a lot of people are jumping into. What's going to happen with Call of Duty? Where, will it stay multi-platform or not? We'll get to that. But right now, I like this idea of exploring some of the IP that are available. I too am excited by what Toys for Bob can do. I thought they did a great job with the Spyro and Crash Bandicoot collections and remasters. I really want to see what they could do with some mascot platformers, which is a known genre void that Xbox has. They really need to get a good few mascot platformers, and in this purchase, they have acquired just that, and the potential for far more going forward. Toys for Bob, a very talented studio. I want to see something happen with the Skylanders franchise, not necessarily with Toys to Life, but with the platforming elements and the bright family-friendly elements of that. There's so much potential there for a Game Pass subscription for a family, right? You snag into a Game Pass subscription, and you've got something for your teenagers, you got something for your younger gamers, and for the family to play together. Toys for Bob, I think, is a perfect studio to deliver that content. I think it'd be really cool to see them explore some of their more dormant IP within Activision, like Time Shift or True Crime. The potential seems endless for the stuff that you wouldn't mention, like those franchises. Whereas a lot of people are talking about Diablo, Call of Duty, and even something that's a bit more niche but exciting, like Tony Hawk. Potential for me is the name of the game when it comes to this acquisition, for sure.
Yeah, I think you bring up a really good point that I don't hear too many other people talking about, and that's with this pickup. We get a lot of potential for IP that is kid friendly, which is a very, very weak area for Xbox. Xbox does not really have a whole lot in the way of like kids games. They focus on Minecraft, and Super Lucky's Tale is kind of the standout that a lot of people go to, but it's just one game. This brings in a lot of potential to be able to cater to that demographic that normally most people would just say, oh, well, just buy a Nintendo Switch and you're fine. It's like, well, that kind of takes people out of the ecosystem, and that's not exactly something everyone wants to do. You don't want to have to support 2 consoles for one kid. If you've got Game Pass, you want to be able to have something that's for them everywhere. And they may be content with like Fortnite and Roblox and stuff, but there's a potential to build in a whole generation of fans for things like Crash Bandicoot and Spyro, or even new IP for kids from those studios that now actually has an opportunity because they're not under the thumb of, Bobby Kotick telling them they all need to work on Call of Duty.
Right. Right. And as xCloud becomes more prominent, the need for gaming specific devices becomes less necessary. We've seen that in the last 2 years with touch controls. More and more games are boasting accessibility features and touch controls in the mobile space via xCloud. Imagine you're with your family out to dinner. You need to kill some time while you're waiting, and here's my phone. Jump in, play the latest Spyro, play the latest Skylanders, play the Banjo Kazooie Toys for Bob made game via touch controls. Those options are fantastic. I mean, Geometry Wars is a dormant franchise within Activision's IP. Imagine just loading up xCloud and just with a finger tracking down and playing with finger tracking as you're going through and playing Geometry Wars. The possibilities for new gameplay within these IP are just, I think, wonderful. For all ages there within, and we've not even mentioned. I mean, we've got so much time to and whatnot to go through, but like there's PC elements to this as well. When you look at StarCraft and Warcraft franchises, it's really exciting to me to think that when you bring a Phil Spencer led Xbox in its current state, where they are allowing studios to have their own creativity, they talk about their studio culture being one of inclusion and one of freedom for studios to develop what they want to develop. I'm so excited by the possibilities, and it'll be some time before we see those dividends paid. But I want to see games for all ages come out of these IP, and not just a rebirth of old franchises, but a new take on those franchises.
Yeah, I'm with you there, and I keep thinking back to my kind of history with like Blizzard and falling in love with games like Diablo and Warcraft and Starcraft and stuff. Those are my go-tos when I really was in supporting that studio. And I would love to see the potential, because at least the potential is there now for games like StarCraft Ghost, where Dustin Browder was left the company because of the fact that they canceled his StarCraft Ghost game. And it's like, man, if given the opportunity, StarCraft Ghost could have been what Gears of War was. And to have the possibility, just to even think about the possibility of a coalition or Machine Games or id Software being able to jump into the StarCraft world where all that lore is, and that rich kind of just environment for playing around with different play styles in kind of a space opera. It's so beautiful. Just the even mere thought of that, it doesn't have to just be this relic of a bygone time when people played RTSs, and Korea is the only one that is staunchly supporting it in esports. It could be so much more. And if we just had the opportunity to do that, we weren't so focused on trying to just keep the bare minimum, or just focus in on the two big cash cows or the three big cash cows that Activision Blizzard King does, then you could actually imagine if you didn't have to worry about money, and you could just do whatever you wanted, and money was not an issue. How creative could you be if you were one of these studios and you weren't just trying to make as much money as possible for the top echelon of the company and the shareholders? And
right,
that's what Microsoft does. They go in. I've always had two philosophies with the major console manufacturers, not Nintendo notwithstanding. Sony always gives a product to a company, and they grow that product as if they're trying to, they're the artisan building a log cabin out in the woods. They want to build it their way, and they're giving someone the opportunity to build it, and they'll watch and see how beautiful that cabin looks, and if it's good, then they will hire that company to do that for them forever. Microsoft, on the other hand, will look at a house and think, this house has a lot of potential, but it is in bad shape and it is in dire need of refurbishment. So they will buy the house at low cost and then work on rebuilding that house from the foundation up. And the structure, the everything's there. The foundation is laid. They just need to take care of it. They just need to foster that community and that culture that is so natural for Xbox to have with everyone, and see what they can do with it. So it's like, every time I see these kind of acquisitions by Sony and Microsoft, I always look at like, what is the goal of what they're doing? And the goal of what they're doing is the same. They want to bring good content to the gamers because that's the whole point of their companies. But giving them different routes to do that, testing them, letting them work on a project that is not their IP, and seeing how it goes is a very valid way of doing it. And seeing how Microsoft goes about it, where they're taking IP and then freeing people of the necessity of feeling like they have to do something for the sake of the money, and just giving them the opportunity to create without thinking about how much it's going to cost or how long it's going to take.
The way you said it at first made it sound like Xbox was trying to be my friend, and then as you spoke, I was like, all right, I see where he's going with this, and I wanted to acknowledge the fact that they do want to bring great games to gamers, but they want to do that in a way that's going to make them money financially, be a success for their Game Pass subscription. I think a lot of people are beginning to truly recognize that's their intention. Buried in a lot of this news was that Game Pass is now at 25 million subscribers. Personally, I was expecting that to be north of 30, so I was a little surprised by that. I know it sounds strange to be disappointed by 25 million, but I thought it'd be a little bit higher. However, in this acquisition, what they're going to have for themselves is a cadence well beyond that of which they would have had with just Bethesda or the studios they'd acquired prior. They're now going to be able to have a shooter and an RPG every year. Every year they can have one with and do it by way of de-annualizing some of their other shooters, so they don't need to pressure a Doom sequel every year or a Doom Wolfenstein cadence. They can break that up a bit with Halo, with Call of Duty, if they choose to do that with that franchise, with Singularity or some of these other kind of dormant IP. They can now have games in cadence with a rhythm that allows subscribers to get new content regularly. Every quarter is a new game. And fresh takes on a lot of these, meanwhile not pressuring studios to try to have an annual release that forces crunch, pushes and emphasizes negative work culture. It, to me, is very promising. They've got inroads with a lot of these IP into Game Pass for PC. We talked about inroads into family-friendly style gaming and to shooter spaces. There's a lot of ways to look at the benefits for this one. We'll loop back to that, but we've kind of accidentally touched on some of the potentials for toxic culture. Activision, a lot of red flags within their company. Bobby Kotick, of course, a monster of a human being, multiple times outed as such in recent months, and it makes sense in hindsight why Microsoft was a bit quieter on this than they could have been. Perhaps some legal issues in the middle of an acquisition for why they can and can't comment on certain things. But for all intents and purposes, it looks like Bobby Kotick will be out the moment that this deal goes through, which is expected in June of 2023. And he'll have a golden parachute, which is gross, but kind of is par for the course with these big time CEOs. But in the meantime, there's a lot of cleanup to be done with the cultures within Activision, a lot of harassment and marginalized voices being mistreated. What was your take or vibe on what it is that Microsoft's commenting on these kind of toxic workplaces that are?
I think it's clear that we aren't seeing what happened with Bethesda, where Phil Spencer and Todd Howard are setting up a stage and they're going to go out and they're going to have a nice sit down chat about what it's going to mean for these two companies to come together. It's like, nah, it's not quite what's happening here. I think everyone realized back in August that the scales had been lifted from our eyes. We had seen the true horrors that had become what was once a revered publisher as Activision Blizzard King. And after reading the words from Phil Spencer, both on the press release that he put out, plus in subsequent interviews, and also Satya Nadella's interviews, it's clear to me that they recognize that what's going on right now over at Activision Blizzard is not the type of culture that we want in the games industry. And while I hate the fact that Bobby Kotick is going to get away and not get fired, he'll be able to take his money, complete his contract, and be able to walk away without any kind of repercussions. The sheer fact that he's gone means that there is a large opportunity now for Activision Blizzard to hit the reset button on the culture. And that's been something that has been waning especially with Blizzard for years now. There's constantly been choices that have been being made at BlizzCons that have been counterintuitive to the core values that they have on the ring around the big wolf statue that they have in their Irvine campus, and it's nice to see that there's a lot of lost player people that were at those companies that left because they just weren't happy with the fact that the core values were being ignored. And having Phil Spencer become the CEO, which is a new title for him, and means that he's
CEO
going to
of gaming.
Yeah, so he'll be in control of Activision Blizzard King and the rest of the stuff. So it's an interesting way for them to kind of make sure that it's a smaller company within the Microsoft group. It's nice to see that they recognize that there is a cultural issue. As much as they like to be hands off with their studios after acquisition, there does need to be a little bit of a strong arming into this. Hey, you're going to be inclusive. You're going to fix everything. You're not going to let this continue on. This toxic behavior is hurting the games. It's hurting the employees. It's hurting gamers in general. We want to celebrate games. They are an art form. We want to, support the industry, but we can't do that if we are constantly feeling like the people that are making the things that make us happy are in pain. And having Microsoft step in, I think they were the only ones that was going to be doing this. I can't imagine what an Activision Blizzard would look like if a company like EA bought them, or a company like Take-Two. Like we just don't know what their cultures are. They're not forward facing enough for us to feel like we're comfortable with those cultures to sit there and say like, yeah, I trust an EA with an Activision Blizzard. They've done a great job with their sports games. I can totally see them doing a good job with World of Warcraft. It's like
not a thing you can say. And every major company that you've listed, and I'll even add Ubisoft in there, has had their own scandals in the last year or outings of poor culture. And I want to read the quote that Phil Spencer included in the press release. So of course this is a bit of PR speak. But let me read the quote and then throw a take at you on this one. He says, quote, "As a company, Microsoft is committed to our journey for inclusion in every aspect of gaming among both employees and players. We deeply value individual studio cultures. We also believe that the creative success and autonomy go hand in hand with treating every person with dignity and respect. We hold all teams and all leaders to this commitment. We're looking forward to extending our culture of proactive inclusion to the great teams across Activision Blizzard," end quote. And in many ways, while that is PR speak, we've seen them walk the walk and talk the talk in the best ways over the past few years. It's been a slow, ongoing, arduous process, but it feels to me like Microsoft is one of the few standouts as doing this right. And they included the gaming leadership team's picture for this new Microsoft gaming division in their press release. And in that press release, you're able to see that more than half the leaders of this gaming leadership team are women. Very few of them are white guys. Phil Spencer, and I don't want to speculate too much, but it looks like only two others are white people, or sorry, white men. And that is boding well to an industry that has been dominated by only one demographic of late. And to me, I find this very promising to see marginalized voices, people of color, being included in a leadership team that also includes pronouns, and they're discussing their roles in there. I think it's a bold statement. It's a reminder of what's important, and it also is one example amongst many that they are trying to walk the walk as they talk the talk. I don't know if you noted, but something that was evident to me as this deal broke was a lot of the Microsoft employees were opening up on Twitter and in social media, welcoming their future coworkers from Activision into a place that they were very proud to work. That is not something that regularly happens, particularly as Activision has had many of their employees vocal about their unhappiness within the company. Did you note that?
I missed out on the Xbox side of it. My circles on Twitter and stuff have been more centered around like the Blizzard employees. So when I would see this happen, I actually saw a lot of people who used to work at Microsoft who were now currently working at Blizzard who were very happy about this news, because they they wanted to stay with Microsoft. There was a better opportunity at Blizzard to do something that's exciting, and they felt bad that they had to leave the studio or the company that they enjoyed for moving to a different one. And then, of course, as things kind of play out, you start seeing that. The other thing I noticed was a lot of condemnation towards Bobby Kotick from producers, specifically over on Overwatch side, who were frustrated at the fact that Bobby was throwing the team under the bus for the delays with Overwatch 2. And in truth, seeing that the producer was saying that he was the one that had mandated them to work on side projects for Overwatch 1 during the production of Overwatch 2, and that had those projects not been given to them, there was an opportunity that Overwatch 2 would already be done and out, and there wouldn't have been such a long tail to this development cycle for them. So I've been seeing it where, from my perspective, it seems like at least there is a tentative rejoicing from a portion of the Blizzard community, both from the fan side and also the employee side, that they're happy about this. The concerns that I have for this do come in the form of, how is this going to trickle down when there's an acquisition for the employees, as far as their healthcare, as far as the shares that they might have had in the stock for the company? How is their like vacation time going to be impacted? Work from home, is that something that's going to be embraced or shut down? Like there's things in there that will only come with time, and we may not ever find out during this year of kind of acquisition, as things get approved, plans get set into place, and people put in charge of making sure that things happen. How the employees are going to be impacted at a very personal level, not just a making video games level.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. That's a good point. I will ask the question, and it is meant to be just a question because I see it and versions of this posted around. Is that something that gamers should care or worry about? I know my stance on this one, but should gamers concern themselves with how much vacation time developers are getting and such? Is that a big deal for gamers to think about?
From a gaming perspective, I would say no. If you have friends in the studios or you care about the health of a studio, that is something to kind of champion. But it really does kind of come from a personal perspective. I have friends at Blizzard that I worry about because they're personal friends, but only because of the games that they've worked on. So, had I not cared about the games, I wouldn't have learned about the employees. And if it wasn't for me learning about the employees, I wouldn't have become their friends. So it's touch and go. Depends on your dedication to that studio. I was very dedicated to Blizzard and the people that work there. And when all this came out, it was really tough. So, but as a whole, I don't think that that's something they need to worry about, because I think just with their jobs and stuff, I don't think other people are worried about how much vacation time you as a gamer have to be able to take off for the next Halo release or the next Gears release. That's not something that other people should really worry about it. But in my mind, whenever I think of an acquisition, those are the things that I worried about when it would happen to a company that I was in. So my first instinct is to worry about my friends at the studio. But generally, no, I don't think gamers need to worry about that. I think what gamers should worry about is supporting the companies that are doing the right things for their employees. Not supporting crunch when possible, trying to make good investments in games that they think should be supported. Pay or support with your wallet and be vocal about injustices if you can, if you feel like that's your place. Otherwise, just enjoy the games and just use it as the entertainment medium that it is.
Yeah. For me, it's a complex issue in many ways, in that you should just play the games that you enjoy. And if you're impacted on a moral level, then vote with your wallet, of course. And I think many people did that. As you look at Vanguard's reception, it certainly made a lot of money. It did chart NPD, but it also was maligned in a lot of ways, as was EA's Battlefield, and that's going to change the shooter space for sure. Right now, Activision has roughly 10,000 employees, and over the next year and a half, we're going to learn a lot about how those employees are going to be affected. And as a gamer, you have to choose what's important to yourself and where you stand on certain issues. But I am encouraged by the behaviors of Microsoft in the last 3, 4, 5 years, uh, as far as inclusion goes and the way that they treat their employees. So I'm encouraged by that. I don't know that I would feel positive about an acquisition like that in many other cases. A lot of people are bringing up, like what would have happened if it had been Sony or EA or some of the ones that you listed had they acquired Activision. I don't know that we'd be having quite the same conversations. Now, let's talk about Call of Duty specifically, Logan. Call of Duty, one of the biggest franchises, second probably to Candy Crush in this big acquisition. That's why, if any listener wasn't sure why Logan kept mentioning King earlier, King is kind of the one in charge of Candy Crush there. But Call of Duty is the big one. Does Call of Duty stay uh, multi-platform? Does it not? There have been a lot of comments. Phil Spencer tweeted out, quote, "Had good calls this week with leaders at Sony. I confirmed our intent to honor all existing agreements upon acquisition of Activision Blizzard and our desire to keep Call of Duty on PlayStation. Sony is an important part of our industry and we value our relationship," end quote. I found that one very interesting. Activision came out with their own statement saying they intend to honor all existing agreements as well. And Sony, for their part, had a few comments also. For me, when I look at this one, Logan, I wonder whether or not we see Call of Duty in 2024 and beyond uh, as a multi-platform property outside of the battle royale free-to-play elements of Warzone or whatever the equivalent in 2024 is. I do not see a likelihood that Call of Duty stays multi-platform in its campaign state. And I had a lot of pushback. I've seen a lot of people do some great jobs breaking down numbers. Not something that I have done. Dr. Mo, who was on the show last week, had some great counterpoints to my logic in some private DMs. Really enjoyed that back and forth there. But when I look at the way Call of Duty has struggled with its annual releases, and I look at the model that Halo has taken with a company like Xbox saying, "Hey, 343, take the extra year. We'll take the hit. Take the extra year. Get a product that's worth putting out. Put it out there." We see that Halo Infinite charted an NPD just behind Call of Duty in November, despite being free to play multiplayer and its campaign available in Game Pass. We know Game Pass drives sales. I see a world where Call of Duty campaigns are exclusive to Xbox platforms, be it PC, cloud, or otherwise. I see free to play elements of multiplayer available on multi platform spaces going forward because we know that PlayStation wants to keep Call of Duty and Microsoft needs to recoup value. But I don't see it staying multi platform unless there are concessions or deals cut and made. A bit of tit for tat. I wonder if I'm, being a bit too cavalier about that. What is your take on this one?
I can see both sides, like Doctor Strange, man. I've looked into the future. I've seen the possibilities, and
Okay.
and
Yes.
I can see there's so many ways this could go. If I was Microsoft, there's two approaches that I would take. I would give Xbox players a reason to stick with the platform. I would give them campaigns that they would be excited for, and Warzone would be something that kind of lives on for the time being as something that is free to play for every console, because having that healthy ecosystem is going to be beneficial for the game, not just the consoles themselves. I can also see this as what you said, is a tit for tat. There is a bargaining chip that Phil Spencer has, and I don't think it really takes a bunch of phone calls to the leaders of Sony to say, "Hey, everything's going to be okay." I think they are making those deals. I think that having crossplay is one of those bargaining chips that now is on Xbox's side thanks to Call of Duty. I think that the cross-gen cost increase that Activision and EA and what is it, Sony have been charging their customers for, to go from a PS4 to PS5 as opposed to smart delivery, which just gives you the best version for the hardware that you have. I think there are now chips on the board that Xbox has that they didn't have prior to this acquisition, that they could use to say, like, hey, if you want these campaigns from Call of Duty, because they are such an integral part to the first person shooter genre for the Sony PlayStation, you're going to have to make concessions, because we are not just going to give it to you. We need something in return, whether that be the the pipe dreams of having Game Pass on a Sony platform, which I honestly don't think they'll do. I think it will, and I think that's because of Sony. I don't think Sony would want that on there. I think Xbox would love to have it on there. But I think that there is a potential for campaigns to stay multi-platform, but there's going to be some heavy concessions on what deals get put in place to make sure that Xbox is things. Whether it's you have to log into an Xbox account to be able to play those, or you have to be able to have cross-play free, so that there's no cost between companies, whether they want to be able to have they don't have to pay that extra fee to Sony for that kind of stuff. It's hard to say. If I had my druthers, I would say that Xbox needs to be hard about this. Campaigns need to stay on an Xbox console. That's why you spent the money for that IP. You want to build Game Pass. I think 25 million is an interesting number to relay in a thing. I think they wanted it to be higher. I think them saying like, hey, if you want to play Call of Duty, sign up to Game Pass. There's 25 million players right now. I think they want that to be closer to 40 in a couple years time. And the way to do that is to push campaigns day one Game Pass and keep it exclusive. Keep Warzone something that's multi-platform. There's plenty of other first person shooters out there. There's Apex Legends. You've got Fortnite out there. There's PUBG now just went free to play as well too. There's plenty of opportunity for people to play games, but the fact that it's Call of Duty will always sell. And I think they know that. And I think they want to push that. I think they would much rather have people buying Xboxes and signing up for Game Pass than they would trying to stay on a Sony platform.
God of War is crushing it in its recent PC release. We know Horizon's coming to PC. There is a real case to say that Sony is waking up to this PC element. You think we see God of War, or Horizon, or any of these others drop into Game Pass for PC? I mean, I'm spitballing in the funniest ways because a week and a half ago, man, I never would have imagined, right? Like, none of this sky's the limit. Like, am I going to get Spider-Man on Xbox at some point? Do I just need to log into my Xbox account to get achievements, on a PlayStation? Is this where we are headed? Because they're it seems to me like some of these giants are waking up to the idea that rising tides lift all boats, and if you want to make a lot of money, you got to shake hands. And
it's so interesting, man.
I'm curious. I don't know. Like, that's a pie in the sky element. Some people are probably laughing their heads off, but would you laugh your head off at the idea of Microsoft acquiring Activision for $70 billion? In doing that, they have opened themselves up to a PC market that they wouldn't have gotten as they grow Game Pass for PC. You mentioned Korea. What does this mean for StarCraft and World of Warcraft and so much? I mean, the sky is now the limit. And so nothing's off the table anymore, at least not in my mind. Like, what else could happen here? I want to see some of these deals cut because I want to just be able to play with my buddies wherever, in whatever ecosystem, whether my friend's getting a trophy and I'm getting an achievement. I don't like the idea that Spider-Man was exclusive because that's a character I think belongs to everyone. It's just wild at all these weird tit for tats that could happen. And if none of these ever do, both companies, Sony and Microsoft, are going to be just fine because they have got some crushingly amazing IP. Like, strictly Sony, you got what you have: Last of Us, God of War, Horizon, Spider-Man, Gran Turismo, Uncharted. I mean, they're going to be just fine. Xbox is going to be just fine. I'm just so excited by what these deals cut could be. I'm rambling because I'm excited.
Yeah, it's one of those situations where Microsoft is making big moves. They are still behind. They are still the lowest selling console out there. They are still trying to catch up to what Sony has. Sony still has an amazing list of IP that you mentioned. When it comes to the idea of Sony exclusives showing up on Game Pass, it seems so astronomically out of the question that had you'd asked me a week ago if Activision Blizzard was something that was going to be purchased by Microsoft, I would have actually laughed. I saw a tweet the night
Logan,
before
they
that.
literally, Court Lalonde asked me last week what the next one was to go to, and I was like, Activision, Call of Duty's never going to Game Pass. And they've literally said, we're going to work on bringing their catalog to Game Pass. Who's the fool now? Me.
It just goes to show, it just comes down to the right situation. I think if Sony starts to feel the hurt because of Game Pass and there's an opportunity there, then I could totally see it. But with the way Sony operates is they're very bullish on how good their IP is. They understand the power that their IP has, and that's why they can charge $70 for their games and no one blinks an eye. But they put out really good content. So oh man, I don't know. Call of Duty is a force to be reckoned with. Good, bad, doesn't matter. Everyone plays it, everyone wants it, everyone expects to get it, and there's a large non-vocal group of people out there that will pick it up regardless. But I can tell you right now, man, if Call of Duty goes on Xbox and it's exclusive, someone's going to walk into a store and they're going to say, I want Call of Duty for the PlayStation 5, and someone's going to be like, that's not a thing anymore. You're going to buy an Xbox. They're going to buy an Xbox. That's just what Call of Duty does. So I don't know that I would see them being able to use Call of Duty as a bargaining chip to the extent of getting Sony exclusives on Game Pass. Would I like that? Oh, hell yeah. I would love to not have to spend $70 or wait for sales and be out of the zeitgeist for that kind of stuff. But man, I think Sony is still kind of treading water. They're still kind of dipping their toe into the water that is the PC verse and seeing how games do. And I think because of how good God of War is doing, I think they are starting to wake up to that idea of, okay, this seems like a market that is not going to cost us a lot in PlayStation 5 sales, given we can't even keep up with supply right now. This may be a good alternative for us to be able to bring in cash that we normally wouldn't get, because clearly there is a large subsect of people who will not buy a game or buy a PS4 console to play a game that came out in 2018. They would much rather just wait and never play it than have to buy a console for it, because they are so dedicated to the PC side.
That's a good point. Man, it's funny because I wanted to say stay so structured in this conversation, but my mind continues to just run rampant with possibilities, questions. I feel so foolish at the idea of thinking, well, what if the tit for tat brings Spider-Man over or doesn't? You want Call of Duty, make sure Spider-Man's multiplayer. My mind goes there, but I just feel so silly when I do that as well. It's awesome. I think it's exciting. It's fun to see the speculation, the surrounding conversations about the different IP and their power and their sway in the gaming industry. My pie in the sky was bringing Spider-Man over because I want him to be multi-platform. I sincerely doubt that'll ever happen. But do you have a pie in the sky, hope or wish that comes out of this deal is for in any direction, in any way?
Yeah, I would honestly, I would love to see StarCraft brought back to the storytelling sci-fi narrative that it was. We're going to be getting we're going to be getting Starfield at the end of the year, and I think that's great. I think what Todd Howard is striving to do is amazing, and I can't wait for that. But I have such a connection to the StarCraft characters. With Kerrigan and Rayner and Tychus in them, and it's one of those things where, for so long it felt like the ignored child. Like, how many Nintendo fans have been begging to have like an F-Zero game brought in, or a Metroid Prime 4, and we've never gotten those kind of big dreams and wishes. How many people want another Banjo-Kazooie, and we just haven't gotten those things. So, if I had a pie in the sky thing that came from this acquisition, I would just love for one of the teams at Microsoft, one of the 32 studios that they have, to raise their hand and be like, I would like to work on StarCraft. Can Mr. Matt Booty, can I have that? Because that would be nice.
That would be cool.
If I would love to have Spider-Man available to everyone. I am one of the people that went and hunted down a PS5 to be able to play those games on those consoles. So but I recognize that I'm privileged in that aspect. I don't get that opportunity the way many other people do. But I also recognize that those deals, that game probably wouldn't have been a thing if it wasn't for Insomniac and if it wasn't for Sony buying Insomniac. So
Mm-hmm.
I have to come at the perspective is would I want to play Spider-Man as much as I do if it wasn't Insomniac's Spider-Man making it, and if Sony wasn't footing the bill for that?
All the more ironic given that now with Activision, the previous Spider-Man makers of Beanox are Xbox Studios. You know what I mean? Like they made some really good and some mediocre Spider-Man games. But yeah, like it's all the more ironic that you say that because the previous makers of those games are now Xbox Studios or will be in a year and a half.
Do you think that those games will come? Like we know that they've shuttered the backwards compatibility side of Xbox. They did their last launch of games back in, I think it was November. Do they reopen that? What is that team working on now? Like if they're not doing backwards compatibility, what are they working on? So do you think that they would take a look at the games that Activision had published before and now offer those through backwards compatibility?
Yeah, I do think they take a look at it. I don't know why they wouldn't take a look at it. Sky's the limit, man. Money opens a lot of doors, and I think a lot of places that we thought were previously shut off are now going to be re-examined. Court Lalonde even asked us in the questions for this show whether or not we thought FPS boost would come to old Activision and Blizzard games. Yeah, I think a lot of love and attention will be paid to that back catalog, even if it means reopening a few back compat games. When it comes to franchises that are locked behind, different types of IP like Spider-Man, I think it'll be a case-by-case basis. You might get some, not others. Sony wants to make money. They've been really protective of Spider-Man as an IP, but Spider-Man shows up in plenty of other places on Nintendo. I'm thinking about Ultimate Alliance 3. There are possibilities here. I'm thinking about mobile. So I think a lot of them, the catalog gets re-examined. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a yes to all, no to all. I think it's going to be a case-by-case basis. But characters are important to people, and I think that more and more rising tides lift all boats. And so, Spider-Man No Way Home came out, and suddenly Spider-Man sales jumped up, right?
Yeah.
I think we'll see something similar.
Do you think that part of the deals that might be keeping Call of Duty multi-platform, if that's the case, do you think that they start offering the license to Spider-Man back to a company like Beanox? Do we start getting multiple Spider-Man games for Xbox?
I think it's possible, but not at all a one-to-one. Like you're not going to get a third-person open world. Like it wouldn't be in any way the same thing. You might be thinking like Spider-Man Friend or Foe or Ultimate Alliance. You know what I mean? Like you might see Spider-Man as a character show up in more places, but you will not get a competitor to Insomniac Spider-Man. I'm thinking about like Marvel's Avengers had Spider-Man as an exclusive character, right?
Mm-hmm.
That might be the closest you get in a version of seeing Spider-Man back on an Xbox console, but you will not get a competitor in any way, shape, or form. And nor should you. They should not license multiple Spider-Man games that look similar. You know what I mean? That comparison is not healthy for anyone trying to achieve Insomniac's level, because that is the cream of the crop right now.
Are you speaking specifically to the amazing release of Spider-Man in the PS version of Avengers? Is that
well? That was a bad deal from the start. But just in general, like it's not fair to a company to try and release a third-person action version of Spider-Man when Insomniac is making what they're making, and it damages the brand of Spider-Man. Right? They need to be very particular how they curate. And I think they are being careful, for sure.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Let's go to another question. One more to round out the end of our show here. Edward Varnell writes in. He says, will E3 be important to Microsoft this year? Easy question. Yes. And then he says, after an amazing show in 2021, do you expect them to reveal more dates and gameplay or good ambiguous trailers that will leave us guessing? What do you think?
I think we're actually going to see gameplay. I think we're going to get a dive into Redfall. I think we're going to get a dive into Starfield. I think we're probably going to start seeing some actual information about Perfect Dark and Fable. I don't see them. I think Xbox needs to do the thing that they haven't been doing. They've been doing a great job of putting up titles for games that they have plans on working on. I
Mhm.
think it would be positive for them this year to actually start showing those games, because realistically, we're running into the situation where Xbox only has two main titles that we can look forward to this year. Same thing with last year to an extent. We still had a bunch of littler games, but realistically, I would say Forza Horizon 5 and Halo were the two big standouts for what we were looking forward to. And with this year being Redfall and Starfield, I think it's kind of time that they start saying like, hey, we're getting closer to Everwild, we're getting closer to the Fable game and Perfect Dark, and giving us an idea of what those games are going to start actually looking like. Because I would love to see, what Crystal Dynamics is actually helping out with the Perfect Dark game. I want to know what the style is, what the gameplay is, if they're going to stick to just it being a shooter, or if they're going to add any interesting elements to it. I think that those are some of the things that if Microsoft wants to succeed this E3, which I'm still kind of in question whether or not it's important that they are going to be at E3. I don't even know if E3 is going to be a thing this year.
Right. Right.
But I do think that they are going to have their own show, whether there's an E3 or a Summer's Game Fest, or whatever happens to come out that time. I think that they will definitely do their own show, and I think that show is going to be insane, because I think while they can't speak to Activision Blizzard stuff during that show, I think that we're going to start seeing a little bit more about stuff that was in talks before the Bethesda acquisition, and then maybe some vertical slices from some of the companies that were working on some of those games that were just title cards on last year's E3. So that's kind of what I want them to do. If I had to put out like a list of ways for Xbox to succeed at E3 paper.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I think we do see an E3 like event, whether or not E3 proper happens. Microsoft has shown a propensity to support E3, not the least of which because Activision and Phil Spencer are on those boards, for sure. But whatever it is, you do need to see gameplay this year, Edward, of some of the future projects, at least to continue selling the idea of them. To Logan's point, Redfall and Starfield are very overdue for gameplay if we are getting them in this year, and those are to be the only Xbox exclusive titles that are of a AAA capacity from Xbox Game Studios. But who knows at this point right now? I mean, there's so much up in the air as the pandemic continues to go, right? It certainly changes a lot of things as work from home fluctuates for different countries, for different studios and studio cultures. A lot more question marks than answers. That's for sure. That is for sure.
If you had to pick one IP that they did a deep dive on that wasn't Redfall or Starfield, is there one that's kind of in the wings that you're looking forward to for like an E3 moment?
No, but that's because quietly whispers ready to run out of the room. None of their stuff really excites me. Like Fable, Avowed, Perfect Dark, those aren't my games. My games are Halo and
Yeah.
Gears, and I've gotten those. So and Forza. So I kind of got like State of Decay 3 is a good ways out. I think that's the next one that I'm super excited for. So now it's interesting to be an Xbox content creator for me, in that I got my big thing that I'm looking forward to. Starfield doesn't even chart. I couldn't even care less about Starfield at the moment. I've seen nothing to sell me because Skyrim in space isn't my jam, right? I'm just not excited by that. Halo was what my big reason for being part of this community was, as was Gears. And so, as our superhero games, which Xbox isn't really doing. Doom is a far way out, the next Doom, whatever that may be. So, the onus is on them in my particular case, but I think I'm in the minority there. Like most people are excited to find Skyrim in space. They are excited for the next Bethesda project, and in future they'll be excited for what happens with Overwatch 2 or some of these other shooters. So the onus is on them. There's not one that I need to see. I'm excited to find out what comes from these studios because I kind of got my wish with Halo Infinite. I'm excited for the next Halo campaign whenever that comes out, if it's 2022 or beyond. Like that's an interesting position for me to be in as an Xbox creator.
Do you think that they would surprise us with like a date for the next Halo update for the campaign at E3? Do you think that would be a feasible amount of time for them to say like, hey, coming in 2023, the next Halo story is going to push forward?
Yeah, I do think you do that because you want to remind people that this game is ongoing. You want to remind people that the game is a live service game. You do need to do that. You need to give a date or a timeline, I should say, for when the next single player elements are showing up. We know we're getting co-op. We are understood to believe that co-op is coming at the launch of season 2. They've been really reactive in the best ways with how they're handling the multiplayer side of things. And we know that Microsoft's giving the team time and support to make the game that they want to make. So I've been really encouraged by how they've handled Halo Infinite since launch. They've really done a good job at speaking and communicating with fans for things that are working, are not working, responding to criticisms about their progression and battle pass. But they do need to remind people that single player or campaign elements, co-op or otherwise, are on the way. And so, yes, I do think you see a timeline for the next content for Halo Infinite at E3 or its equivalent to come forward.
I gotta ask, do you want them to go to another biome?
Sure. Yeah, I think we saw the desert biome at the end of Infinite. A lot of the extended lore shows that. We're going to be going there. There's a lot of places to explore that aren't kind of the standard Pacific Northwest looking places. But I was not bothered by the lack of biome when I took into account that most of the missions took you through Forerunner structures, took you through Banished structures that were not Pacific Northwest looking. So when I thought about biomes, it was like they did a really good job with environments, and they really did take you away from the green lush trees as you went through different missions. It's that the open world was the standard biome. And so when I kind of adjusted my perspective there, I was a bit more comfortable. But yeah, I think they need to show a different environment. They need to bring you more and different things to make that open world continuously appealing. You can't just stay the same. Sea of Thieves kind of suffered that as they gave us the fire area.
Devil's Roar.
Thank you, the Devil's Roar. And they've yet to bring in some winter elements. They've chosen instead to expand their game's perception within their known environments. That said, I trust that team now in a way that I wouldn't have prior to launch and prior to the way they've reacted to feedback.
Interesting. Yeah, see, for me, it never bothered me that we were in the Pacific Northwest. I'm like, it looks pretty. There's a bunch of trees. It looks awesome. If anything, just let me blow up the trees, because I think that would be fun. But yeah, I see where they're going with it, and I'm hopeful the way you are that we start to get more information about Halo Infinite at an E3 like video or presentation. I still don't know that we're ever going to get that, but I can't wait for like 2024 when we have an E3, but it's just Microsoft, and they have like one presentation, like they give back Todd Howard the ability to have his own Bethesda like presentation, and then they bring out Mike Ybarra and to talk about like Blizzard stuff, and we don't have to do like the weird kind of BlizzCon line thing that they did a couple years ago, like and then they've got like the main Xbox one, and it's like this big trifecta of really awesome presentations from studios that are really happy about making the games that they're working on. And Xbox makes their own E3, and they're just like, hey, Nintendo, if you want, we're doing it this day at this time. We'd love to see you there. You don't have to bring anything if you don't want to, but if you had a Metroid Prime, that'd be great. A new Mario Kart, what have you. Sony, you're welcome as well too. You got like an Uncharted or a new Tomb Raider, whatever you want to bring, that's fine. You got a Final Fantasy in the pocket, that's cool. We'll lay the stage, we'll put the table out, the supplies are all here. Just bring what you got, and we'll all sit down and kind of have a nice moment to ourselves. And we don't need the label of E3 for this to still feel like an E3.
True that. A good point made. Well, Logan, I think it's time for us to depart. Ladies and gents, you need to go support Logan and his new show, The Xbox Wrap Up. Logan, let people know where they can find you over on the social spaces and any other projects you got coming up.
Yeah. Well, first off, thanks for letting me come on to the show. It's always been something I've wanted to do. I love listening to your show. It helps me get through my week. And I love all the interviews that you do with devs and actors and stuff, and bringing in voices that you wouldn't normally hear with any other podcast. No other podcast goes out of their way to try and get as many different interviews and voices from the industry into their show. It's always just like, we're going to react to this. So I love what you do. So thank you for giving me an opportunity to actually be involved with that. I really love that. To if people want to get a hold of me though, you can always hit me up on Twitter. Twitter's kind of the main place I hang out. I'm at CAPT_LOGUN at Capt Logan. You can listen to the Xbox wrap up wherever you want. The Twitter for the Xbox wrap up on Twitter is just that, the Xbox wrap up. But yeah, I just really looking forward to this next year in seeing what we get to do with video games, man. Xbox is coming out swinging.
There's a lot to talk about. It's going to be so many things to break down in the future. Guys, you can find me on Twitter at InsipidGhost. Email me, insipidghost@gmail.com. Thank you for your support. Like, share, subscribe, all the additional things that you can do to support a show. Take care, everybody.